Hey everybody, welcome to a very special edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling.
Hey guys.
Phillips. We're here at Matt's place, and as you can see, we're here to talk about Kiss, and not just Kiss in general.
Oh, no.
Very, very specific. I don't know if you can really tell what we've got up here. We're talking about a very specific era of the band and a very specific album, 1981's Music from the Elder. And we're going to get into basically all things Elder. A really cool book to talk about. Matt's got some cool stuff here and the versions of it that we've got. But first of all, I want to start off with when I first was aware of this album. Matt was into Kiss before I was, so you got into Kiss
I was into Kiss in the 80s.
Yeah.
A lot of people got into Kiss in the 70s, but I was like Asylum, Crazy Nights, and Smashes and Thrashes was like the first one.
Timeline is everything.
Yeah.
And so you were familiar with Animalize, Asylum, Crazy Nights, that stuff, the non-makeup stuff. I was decidedly not a Kiss fan until '93, and Matt was largely responsible for getting me into Kiss. But I was always interested in just knowing stuff about bands, and I remember, I want to say that it was around 88 or 89, that the Pepsi Power Hour on Much Music, I learned a lot about hard rock and metal just from watching that, even before I started buying rock magazines. Little by little, I became aware that Kiss had this album called The Elder, that's all I knew it as, and that they didn't like to talk about it. And of course, for me, I was like, why? Why?
Pique your interest.
Yeah, very much so, because seeing interviews with Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, what didn't they like to talk about themselves? You know what I mean? Like, what aspect didn't they like to talk about? So I'm like, okay. So that's just one nugget of information. It's not like I spent a lot of time thinking about it. Then I also remember probably early 1990. Do you remember on Much Music that Terry David Mulligan had Much West on the weekends, I think Sunday nights, but they had an all-request version of Backtracks, which is when he would play older videos, which I used to just love watching. Even if a video was 3 years old, it was just something they didn't play all the time. And I remember it was an all-request Backtracks, and someone wrote in, and they wanted to see the video for A World Without Heroes from The Elder. And I remember Terry David Mulligan saying, oh, good request. That's definitely one we don't play very often. I think you'll see why it's kind of dated. So I'm like, okay, this must be from the Elder album. And I saw the video, and if people are watching this, chances are you've seen the video for A World Without Heroes, or at least know the song. Not knowing really much about the band. I mean, I knew so little about the band, I didn't realize that Gene Simmons sang. I didn't know. I didn't know anything about it. I really didn't. Although, to be fair, if you were only going by the singles and the videos that came out in the 80s, and you weren't into the albums, every single was Paul was the front man, he sang everything. But anyway, besides all that, the band looked so strange. Paul with short hair and his headband, Ace with short hair playing an acoustic guitar. Nothing really stood out about Eric when he had his big drum set. It was cool that Gene, the tear down his face at the end of it. It was just and the song
Paul Stanley doing the lead.
Yeah, the song was very mellow. It wasn't a typical Kiss song. I mean, it was no less typical than Beth, but I wasn't into the band. So I was like, okay, that's weird. so then I was like, okay, so it must sound like that. Not all of it did, but... So anyway, fast forward to 1993, I'm getting into Kiss. I'm really interested in getting into Kiss. And then part of it is the excitement of, I like getting into a band that's got a vast back catalog. It's just a lot of fun stuff to now is on your radar to collect. It's happened to me several times. Alice Cooper and Yes and Queen. It's fun. And it's kind of the basis of what, as music fans, what we like to do. But one of the things I got thinking about was, okay, I finally get to find out what this Elder is all about. Matt, what's it all about? How would you describe the album, the full title, to anybody curious?
So it's basically like a coming of age kind of story, would you say?
Yeah.
Like where there's this council of the elders who've been around since when the Earth was young, they were already
old. It was very Star Wars, a long time ago, far, far away. It was.
Yeah, and so they find the chosen one. boy, or
you can call him Luke Skywalker. You can call him Frodo.
Yeah.
You know, it's very classic storytelling.
and he goes on in Odyssey.
Yeah.
I think Gene kind of spearheaded this concept.
Oh yeah.
And
Gene was a big comic book fan.
yeah. Oh
you know,
yeah.
So it made sense. It was heroes and villains. And all of this you might be thinking, if you're not really a Kiss fan, that doesn't sound very Kiss. Well, I think the world at large agreed, and definitely that most of the fan base. So this album came out in late 1981, and we've referred to it in short and firm as The Elder. The full title is actually Music from, in brackets, The Elder. They were so sure that this album was going to be a hit that inevitably a movie would be made, and this would be the soundtrack to the movie. They made the music and the soundtrack before even, before the movie was made, and it's a fascinating period in Kiss's history. This is the first album that Eric Carr plays on. He had replaced Peter Criss as drummer in 1980. He didn't play on Unmasked, but for that matter, neither did Peter. But he did the Unmasked tour with them. They only did one show in North America. They did one show at the Palladium, New York with Eric Carr. And then they went to the UK, and then they went to Australia, where they did very, very well.
Yeah.
But it was basically, they felt like...
After Unmasked, which was a
very poppy album. Some great songs on it, but it wasn't that successful. And plus, they'd been around for a while, and they'd been in the spotlight for quite a while.
So at first they kind of went in with the intention of, okay, we're gonna do a more hard rock kind of Kiss record, and I think that's where they first recorded either demos or they did the first versions of what ended up on Killers.
Yeah. So like Partners in Crime and Nowhere to Run, and also I think it was just called Deadly Weapons.
Yeah.
There's demos floating around of these songs, and they're pretty good. Like you could hear that there's good songs in there. Gene took the title "Love's a Deadly Weapon" and eventually used it for a not as good song on Asylum, but that's another story. So.
And then Bob Ezrin.
Yeah, so Bob Ezrin, legendary Canadian producer. He'd worked with, he brought Alice Cooper to stardom. He produced all of those big albums as the band, and off and on quite a bit with Alice as the solo artist, up to this very day, actually. So he worked with Lou Reed, Pink Floyd, all kinds of different stylistic variations on what you might call rock music. But in the Kiss world, he's known for producing Destroyer, probably their most critically acclaimed album.
So after Alive came out, they were like,
yeah,
something a little.
And it was different. It was orchestral. There were, Beth would never have appeared on Hotter Than Hell, for instance, and he pushed them to try different things. And when you think about it, Destroyer is a lot like an Alice Cooper album. It's got themes. Yeah. It's got. And whereas Alice embraced that and wanted that, the Kiss guys, I think, were a little, especially Ace and Peter, were a little more hesitant. But anyway, Destroyer was initially not successful, but Beth became a big hit, and they were on their way. So he had that sort of cachet in the Kiss world. So he had just come off of producing The Wall for Pink Floyd, which was worldwide hit album,
double concept album.
Yeah, so. Put the two of them together. This was actually, I think, Bill O'Coin, their managers, because he kind of had the sense that, when things are going wrong in a band's career, they have to blame somebody. Well, blame the record company, blame the management, don't blame themselves. So I think Bill kind of figured, I better do something dramatic here. Let's get Bob Ezrin in. And so they played him the demos. And this is just based on everything we've read. Played him the demos, and Bob's like, scrap all that. We're going to do something big. We're going to do something epic. So they put this album out, and we'll show it to you here in a bit. And long story short, it was not successful. It was a huge commercial flop. It, to this day, I don't think was ever certified gold, although I have to think with SoundScan and stuff, with all people like us buying it on different formats.
So the 500,000 copies.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it would have hit that plateau by now, but basically it didn't hit the top 40, and it was a low period for the band. But years later, like a lot of things, it's gained a cult following, and I will bravely step up and say I'm one of those crazy fans that actually likes this album.
Same here.
But I have to say this: If I were an active KISS fan in 1980, 1981, which is not possible, likely, because I was 6. But if I'd been waiting for a new KISS album, waiting, you know, yeah, okay, Dynasty was okay, Unmasked, yeah, a little poppy, I want to hear a rock album, and The Elder is what I get, not so sure I would have liked it. Not so sure I would have liked it. But because I got into the band in 93 and I got to listen to a big chunk of their material all at once, I could skip around, and I'm fascinated by this period in KISS's history anyway. It was followed by my favorite KISS album, Creatures of the Night. I love this period. I love this lineup. I wish that Paul, Gene, Ace, and Eric Carr had recorded a more standard KISS album, the 4 of them, because nothing against Peter Criss, but I love Ace, I love his guitar playing, and I love Eric Carr's drumming, and I think that combination was, if you've ever seen the live footage of them in Australia, they're on fire. They just sound so good. I think Paul Stanley was hitting his stride as a vocalist. They were just really, really good. I would have loved to have heard, you know, a new 9-10 song album with that lineup. But we got music from The Elder. So I guess the next logical thing would be to show off the record itself.
Okay.
And Matt, I'll get Matt to show off his copy because this is historical.
Well, this is probably one of the oldest records in my collection. I've had it for the longest time. This is music from The Elder.
You notice a very, very tiny little KISS logo.
Yeah, so here's the back. Yeah. Still no photos of the band.
The most visual rock band, you know, in whatever. For the very first time, there's another member, because they were very recognizable, very much like the Beatles, as the, you know, that 4. People knew their names. Not one photo of the band.
Yeah.
Unless you count the fact that that's Paul Stanley's hand.
Yeah.
But
the door knocker
and a little tiny KISS logo buried up there in the corner. Now, imagine being a hard rock fan and looking for a new KISS album. So such was our, fascination with this album. And again, once I started to get into KISS, just looking at this thing was like, this is so weird, man. This is so weird. So at this point, they're still on Casablanca. It was now distributed by Polygram. You open it up, it's this,
gatefold.
it's this huge table, Knights of the Round Table, and this prologue, like we said, when the earth was young, they were already old, and basically it talks about the Elder and the Chosen One and the Sign of the Rose, and it ends off with saying the Odyssey begins. So, and it didn't come with a lyric sleeve. It didn't come with a lyric sleeve, and yet it's one of those albums where you really wanted to know what the lyrics were. So, such was our fascination with this that we actually attempted to listen to the album, and
so we're thinking back in, so this would be
this is 93. This was our second year at NBCC. Probably sat in the library, and I know we wouldn't have sat in the library, but had somewhere where we had to listen, be able to listen to it.
At some point, we would have actually put on the record,
which is the only medium that we had it in. And Matt hand wrote what we thought the lyrics to The Elder were. The entire album, every single song. I see those things crossed out, and
getting a weird glare here.
But anyway, those are Matt's handwritten interpretation of what we thought. Your glory, don't worry.
Some of these,
we got a little bit of it right. But and then
instrumental.
That was the Escape from the Island. But so then, of course, he commits it to. Now we would have had to have done this at the college because none of us had a computer. Well, had a printer or anything. So.
I think I even actually made 2 copies.
Yeah, one for each of us so we could follow along. That's how we were getting into this album, like, totally geeking out on this album. I'll show you the record itself too. There's another hand photo. So there was a personalized logo for this. They really thought this was going to be huge.
I'm not too thrilled with somebody. I actually just realized this the other day. Hadn't seen this in a while. Somebody wrote
Casablanca. Yeah.
In pen.
In case for newer fans, that's not the Casablanca logo. That's somebody wrote that on there with a marker. That's Matt's copy of The Elder. I'll show you mine here. Looks the same here. Again, I just find it so strange that there was not one picture of the band. Although, based on what we've read, the reason for that was explained that there was a very real possibility that they may have unmasked with this album.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know about. That's one thing I didn't know about. Matt's got a Canadian copy. Mine is a U.S. both on Casablanca, both distributed by Polygram, now Universal. And there's that same gatefold. Now mine has, there are different ones of these printed. My version has the credits,
Okay.
not the lyrics, but the credits
wow.
printed right onto this plastic
That's
sleeve.
cool.
There are some of these I think that are white. I've got
Yeah.
a clear one. And okay, so it does say at the bottom of this, and I thought it said it says it on the CD. KISS is Ace Frehley, Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Eric Carr. So it does make mention of who's actually on this album, but it doesn't, no pictures. So I mean, this was recorded at various places. One that gets mentioned the most is Ace's own studio that he had built in Connecticut in the middle of nowhere. Ace in the Hole Studios, which he never they used for this, and that was it. So a lot of it was done in Toronto, which is of course Bob Ezrin's farm. Yeah, Ezrin Farms. It actually says.
Michael Kamen.
The legendary, the late Michael Kamen. Where is it on here? There's the choir.
St. Robert's Choir.
St. Robert's Choir, which we've come to find it actually didn't exist. Robert is Bob Ezrin. So, unlike anything that you'd ever seen from KISS, but what does the music sound like? Well, another thing that was weird about this is that the version that came out that I heard first, and therefore to me, it's strange when I hear any other version of it. The track listing is different in different countries and different versions. I'm used to it starting off with a song called The Oath, which is that really, really cool, heavy, chugging KISS song, the likes of which they would continue to do throughout the 80s. Creatures of the Night, Exciter, I've Had Enough, King of the Mountain, like they liked writing songs like that. This one, of course, was thematically linked to the story of the Elder, and Eric Carr's double bass drums are amazing in it. So just listening to that, I can see where a fan would be like, okay, this is going to be all right. But then right away, you get Just a Boy. First you get Fanfare, and then Just a Boy, which is an acoustic song, Paul singing in a strange falsetto, and there's just so much, there's a lot of variety on here. There's a lot of stylistic variety on The Elder, but it wasn't a KISS album, for the most part. It didn't sound like KISS. Lyrically, even though you could say it's about standing up for yourself, our songs have always been about that, but
yeah, if you've ever heard Gene Simmons' solo album, maybe a little bit more closer to that.
Very much so, as a matter of fact. Anybody, I'm thinking the people that did like The Elder in 1981 were probably big fans of Gene's solo album. It's the easiest entry point to get into. If you like straight ahead hard rock like Paul's and Ace's, no, you were not going to be into this album. As a matter of fact, Ace himself, this was the last album even though he's on the cover of Creatures of the Night, this was the last album he took part in. Contributes a very, very cool little song called Dark Light, which is originally called Don't Run. But he didn't like the direction it was going, and he wanted to make a basic hard rock album. And even the band members themselves have gone back and said maybe he was right. They've really, not... The guys in the band have never had much good to say about this album, especially Paul. They've always kind of dismissed it. I think Gene's a little bit more willing to stand up for a little bit. Again, kind of serving the idea that maybe it was his concept. Yeah. So I'm going to show you the versions of this. So you've got this, we both have the CD, of course. It originally came out, actually when the first batch of KISS CDs came out in, I think, 1987, that Polygram reissued them. They did not reissue The Elder. It wasn't until 1989 that you could get The Elder in anything other than just a cassette. So that's the version I originally have, but Matt and I both have the 1997 remastered versions. I think ours are pretty much the same. And what it did was restore the track listing as per the story of The Elder. So it starts off with Fanfare, Just a Boy, Odyssey. It starts off with the most three unlikely sounding songs to start off a KISS album.
My favorite track is actually, well, other than the single, my favorite track is Only You.
Only You's a cool song. I mean, they borrowed the middle riff of that for something. So, I mean, Gene would always borrow. That's what the disc itself looks like. I'm guessing yours looks much the same. Yeah, it's the same version. It's got as all the KISS remasters, it's got the writing inside of here from Robert Conti, the write-up on the album. And it reprints the back cover, front and back cover, quite well. And, the table setting and everything. But I'm still used to hearing The Oath kick off the album.
Yeah.
I've also got a couple other things here to show you.
So we've got a whole bunch of versions.
This is the cassette that I have of music from the Elder. This one's actually, I think it's from Holland, or yeah, printed in the Netherlands.
Wow.
On Casablanca polygram. So they took a few liberties with the album cover there. The actual proportion-wise, the logo is actually quite a bit bigger.
How's the track listing on that one?
It's the old one that starts off with the
Okay.
oath. It's the, you know, so that's what the side of it, there we
Yeah,
go. That's what the
these-
side of it looks like. There's the cassette itself, the Casablanca logo on it. They wouldn't be using the Casablanca logo much longer. And the only thing inside of here is just the songwriting credits. Most notably, I mean, well, Lou Reed contributes to A World Without Heroes and Dark Light, but Odyssey, this is really interesting. It was written by a guy named Tony Powers, who put out a video of like 3 songs. Yeah. What was it called? Something with a hold, not a hold up.
This is a stick. Yeah.
This is a stick up or something like that, and that's one of them.
Heist or something like
Heist,
that.
yeah. So, and the one other thing, which is the rarest, which you don't see very often, is the 8-track version of the Elder, which is the newest Kiss 8-track I have.
Dark Light is track 2?
Yeah, well, 8-tracks were notorious for mixing up song orders to make the 4 programs roughly the same size. Okay, so first I'll show you, this is a nice Casablanca slipcase with the logo.
The dude on the
back. Yeah, the Bogart or whatever. Yeah. This is a U.S. copy, and so by now it was distributed by Mercury. It looks like it's got some old Rush 8-tracks that look like this. I was really fortunate to find one that was in such good shape.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it starts off with the oath, as you might think, but they wanted to make each program about 10:45. But yeah, Dark Light is split between programs 1 and 2, and yeah, the Elder. As few copies as this would have sold, it would have sold even fewer in this format, because this was towards the end of the retail for 8-tracks. So what kind of reignited, we've always kind of had a soft spot for this album. I guess before we get to that, let's talk about that comic book you got there.
Oh, okay. Not too long ago, a few years ago, Kiss have always put out comics since the 70s. I have that Kiss Compendium collection that collects quite a few of them. I happened to pick this one up at Strange Adventures. So what they've done is they've taken kind of elements from the Elder and tried to make it like a comic book kind
series.
Superhero kind of thing but you can see like so the song Mr.
Blackwell,
yeah, so there's all kinds of references to the Order of the Rose, and now this is only actually it's kind of weird, this Peter Criss, but
it's interesting they're using the Catman makeup and not Eric Fox makeup.
It's you know,
Finding the Truth.
They've collected this entire thing into you can buy like say there were 6 of these comics or something. They're in like a paperback version.
Oh, okay.
If you wanted to collect it on Amazon, but I thought it was something.
It lends. I mean, the concept of it really lends itself quite easily to a comic book story.
Yeah.
And it may have, who knows, eventually in another time it may have made a movie. You never know. Marvel might have said, yeah, we'll do that, because they put out the super specials, the 2 supers, but you gave me one of them, from 1970. I think it's from 78 because it's got an ad for the solo albums in the back of it. So that is a really cool thing that they did. But what really got me thinking about doing this episode was we learned so much about this album that we didn't know from this book here. This is called Odyssey. It was written by Tim McFate and Julian Gill, who both work for KissFAQ.com. And this is an exhaustive look. It's called The Definitive Examination of Music from the Elder, Kiss Cult Classic Concept Album. Couldn't sum it up any better. What you see on the front there, Matt, tell them about what that might be. If you
Mr. Paul Stanley.
Is it a drawing, or it's a drawing of an actual
so
picture?
Actually, I don't know if you can even see it behind me. I've got the original picture of Paul kind of standing just with his street clothes.
Yeah.
Standing by the prop that they used. For
it wasn't a real door. It was a prop.
Looks like they've kind of did a little airbrushing on it and took off his street clothes and put him like in a
robe or so.
But I was thinking, when I got this book, I was like, wow, I've never had a book about one
album. Yeah.
How can they possibly talk for 500 pages about one record?
They do. I mean, it starts off with the album details, and then what I like about it is they do the track by track charting the week it debuted on Billboard and Cashbox, and then the week it dropped off. They did the same thing for the World Without Heroes single. Now here's what's funny about that. They talk about the World Without Heroes being, you know, the whole thing being unsuccessful. The fact of the matter is that A World Without Heroes went all the way to number 56 on the Billboard Hot 100. Now, nowadays, a band of Kiss's vintage would kill to have a single go to number 56. I mean, if you think about it, that's higher than Detroit Rock City got, it's higher than Love Gun got, it's higher than Crazy Crazy Nights got in the States. But at the time, it was the first time that they had a single from an album that didn't crack the top 50. Of course, Beth went all the way to number 7. I Was Made for Loving You went to number 11. I think Rock and Roll I hit number 12. Shandy, greatest song as it is, was a huge hit in Australia. It only got to number, I think, 47 in the States. But still, it got some play on top 40. Probably about half of the top 40 stations reporting for it to get that high. So you got to think World Without Heroes is only 9 positions below that. Another thing that factors into this album not being that successful, in 1981, by the time that The Elder hit the shelves, MTV had gone on the air. But as we learned later on, I think I learned this on Three Sides of the Coin, Polygram, for some reason, had this backwards idea that you need to pay us for the videos. And they're like, no, give us the videos. This is free advertising for you. Give us the videos. That's why you never saw, you know, in the earliest days of MTV, there were no videos from Kiss, there were no videos from Rush, from John Cougar, from Kool and the Gang, any of the artists on the Polygram labels. It was about a year. So if the World Without Heroes video had been out there, MTV was desperate for videos. If you look at the videos played on the first day, they had to repeat. They're playing live REO Speedwagon clips and April Wine and 38 Special. They made terrible videos, but they played them, and those albums sold. So who knows? I mean, if they played the World Without Heroes video, it might have sold some copies. I don't think it was till the I Love It Loud video came out that MTV played any Kiss videos, and then certainly when Lick It Up came out, they started to get more play. But that's another thing that factored in, and that's really backwards thinking on the part of the record label, because I think it was so new. Look what it did. I mean, eventually they did, because look what happened with Def Leppard. They played those primitive clips for like Bringing on the Heartbreak and Let It Go. That brought High and Dry up to gold status, and inside, as I read, I think it was Peter Mensch that said all of a sudden we'd see that places like Lowell, Massachusetts, where the band had never even played, the album starting to sell. Well, MTV's on the air in Lowell, Massachusetts, so it had such an impact. Of course, 3 years later, Much Music, but by then it was already... So, that's all talked about in here, all of it. And
now, one of the things about I find kind of interesting about the record, so it's a concept album, but it's not like one where it has like a strict, like here's like A, B, C, D, like
like a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah. Now, I was looking through the book, and Bob Ezrin had drawn. I don't know if you can even see that. That was his original plan for the track listing of the album, which is I think what we have on the newest version of the CD.
Yeah, I think that the way that it came out in the '97 remix is the way that he had always intended it to be. Oh, this is cool. This is just an advertisement for it that would have run in a magazine. Again, even if you were reading like Circus and Hit Parade and stuff, you're like, what is that? That doesn't look like a Kiss album.
So they've really dug just about as deep as you can go.
There's a lot of talk with Bob Ezrin. They talked to Tim Trombley, one of the engineers. They talked to Chris Lent, who wrote an excellent book called Kiss and Sell. He worked for Glickman Marx. They talked to him. They talked to Tony Powers, the writer of Odyssey. Bruce Gowers, who directed. Yeah, this is something else that I didn't know for many years. They actually shot a video for the song I.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this really weird ice cave Fortress of Solitude set. And it's only been in recent years that we've seen it, and it's really strange. So I talked to Dennis Wollock. He designed album covers for them. Rob Freeman, he's an engineer. Kevin Doyle was an engineer. A lot of engineers on this album because they had so many different studios. And, basically it gives it in context the year in rock, what was going on, what was competing with this album for attention. You know, one of the reasons why it didn't maybe hit the way it did. It's so in depth. They even tracked down the guy that designed the door knocker.
Yeah.
That's how, anybody that had any ties whatsoever to this album, they tracked them down, and it reinforces that, this was a huge undertaking for them. And, as many people will say it was off the mark, I got to give them credit. It was a gutsy move to make.
Absolutely.
And
I think Paul especially went out of his comfort zone.
big time.
I mean, Paul Stanley, fantastic voice, but he's like, just a boy. He's doing that real, that's the real, falsetto kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the song Odyssey, he's actually doing it like an operatic voice.
Yeah, which, years later, of course, he would get rave reviews for doing I almost said Phantom of the Park.
Yeah.
Phantom of the Opera. But at that time, it wasn't, what did he call it? He was embarrassed by his vocal performance.
Yeah.
Even though he said, no, it was fine. It's just what it was needed. And I think he had some sort of mental block going on, because in The Oath, one of the heaviest songs, he has to use falsetto.
Yeah.
Which he normally wouldn't, because he had such a powerful range. It's not falsetto most of the time. It's just him singing. That's his, full voice or full chest voice or whatever. But for some reason, it must have, I don't know if he was stressed or what it was. If you read Paul Stanley's book, that's around the time that I think he had his ear surgery, and it was, there were some personal things going on. But and what a strange introduction for Eric Carr.
Yeah.
Hey
guys.
There was no tour for The Elder. There was one proposed. There was no tour. Although I do remember, and I can't find it online anymore, there was this excellent fantasy review of KISS doing an Elder show at Cobo Hall in Detroit. And somebody was writing as if it was a review.
Oh, really?
And
wow.
when you read what they wrote in it, you're like, that could have happened. That could have actually happened. They talked about Mr. Blackwell now being the centerpiece for Gene's blood spitting and fire breathing, and how Escape from the Island would go into Eric Carr's drum solo. And I'm like, that could have worked.
Yeah.
And in the middle of it, they break down for a somewhat acoustic set. They do Just a Boy and Beth. And it was interesting. It was the tour that never was. It's aside from, of course, Carnival of Souls, it's the only KISS album that they didn't support with a tour, which I understand why they didn't do it, but it also might have kept them afloat.
Yeah.
But the trouble is, of course, what ended up happening in the later 80s, they would have had to play smaller venues than they were used to playing. But who knows? It's just, there are a lot of questions about why did they do it, and in another, it makes sense why it wasn't successful, not because of what's on the album, because it was KISS.
Yeah. Yeah, if this had just been an unknown band,
or if it had been a band that had tendencies towards doing an album like this. It's certainly not the only concept album. Again, Bob Ezrin had just came off The Wall, which was a huge album. Another Brick in the Wall was a #1 song. I think there was such a stigma against KISS. They weren't even, the fans themselves were responsible for the stigma in some ways, but the world at large was more responsible. But
I want to mention one more thing about when you were talking about the book. One of the things that they kept coming up in the book that they were trying to find information about. So this concept album, theoretically, they recorded all of these different voiceovers with 3 different voice actors.
And for interludes in between. In between the tracks.
So they recorded this stuff, and only a little tiny snippet of it appeared at the very end of the album.
Like 2 voices, conversation back and forth. But originally there were supposed to be narrations like that in between each of the songs, which was really fascinating.
And they kept every single person that felt like that they talked to. Do you have any idea? They even talked to the person that found the original reel-to-reel, or the reels or whatever. When they were trying to do the modern remaster of it.
That would have been Robert Conti. It's really, and another thing that comes up quite a lot that I didn't know, and I alluded to it before, there was a chance that they were going to unmask with this album. Which is part of the reason why there are no pictures on here. But obviously that didn't happen until Lick It Up, but things happen, I think, the way they were supposed to, but it's just, there's so many other things surrounding the album. But it made me go back and listen to it again with a new appreciation. Then I hear parts of it and I go, oh, okay. And then there's also, our lyrics, if you were to look at our lyrics, you'd laugh at some of them. In Odyssey, for instance, the chorus is like, once again, once upon, not yet, long ago, someday. I always thought it was from the ghosts of day,
Yeah.
which you just kind of let things. What was the other one that said in the O that was now inside the valley of the ancient birds?
Yeah.
Instead of burns.
Yeah.
A lot of fun stuff and a lot of cool memories. And even if you're a Kiss fan, you bought The Elder maybe out of necessity to fill your collection. I would say if you want something cool to read, get this book and give The Elder a re-listen. You might still, say, no, I don't like it, but it might give you a new appreciation for it. So that's our 2 cents on The Elder, on the Odyssey book, and looking forward to seeing what you guys out there think. Thanks for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions.